We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Monday. We're starting another week, a week that could be pretty fucking crazy. I know this day, Monday, we're going to hear some shit about Donald Trump and the stuff he's got going on with the court. But I'm fortunate to have Eric with me today. Eric's been on the show before, he's written a number of emails. He's our friend from Iowa. He's the blue dot in Iowa, dealing with all the Trumplefucks down there. So, Eric, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. You're
It,
right. I am a blue dot in Iowa. It's weird when I talk to a bunch of people around here, though, they come off as conservative red hats, but yet on certain topics, they all sound more like Democrats. And then the ones that I can really get talking are definitely liberals or Democrats or left leaning, however you want to put it, and not Republican, in any way, shape, or form, but they're mostly the younger folk.
well, the interesting thing about Republicans is this: they're all about law and order, unless that law and order applies to them. Everybody else, it's fine. We want law and order. We want strong policing, but don't do it against us, even though what we're doing is so blatantly criminal. The moment you come after us, now you're not doing your job. And it's like dealing with Republicans is like dealing with little children. I deal with them on Facebook all the time. That they call names and stuff. And I explained to one guy, I said, I hope you understand, when you call me names or come after me, I enjoy this because I know I got in your fucking head and I know you're scared and you're just trying to do anything to shut me up. But here's the problem: you can't shut me up. My wife can't shut me up. How the fuck are you going to shut me up? So it's weird talking to these people, and I got to give you credit. If you're living amongst them, it's like living in the world of zombies, I would imagine.
Sometimes that's why I try not to engage, if I can avoid it. Hell, I was at McDonald's the other day, and some old guy he wanted like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, wanted hot coffee, hot black coffee. And he just started going off on a rant when they told him he had to wait for a fresh pot about how, oh, well, that's how it is in Biden's America. And, pretty soon they won't even have a front counter person. It'll be all machines and they won't have anybody here with jobs. It's like, dude, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You want hot coffee and you want fresh coffee. It's going to take a couple minutes. What
Yeah.
the hell?
Everybody's so entitled. We got all these Karens going on all over the place, losing their shit over the dumbest things. I mean, I get tired of watching them on, how they always have the Karen videos on TikTok. I got to
Yeah.
go buy them because they're all pretty much the same. Somebody losing their shit over nothing, and then not willing to back down even when they've been proven wrong. It's tiring after a while.
Oh, it is. It's very tiring. I mean, and it's not even like in customer service. At one of my two jobs, just had a manager the other day, could not be wrong. I proved her wrong. And then she turned around. She's like, well, this, and just changed it to where she was right. And it's like, okay, fine, whatever. I know you're wrong. Everybody else knows you're wrong, but you can't admit that you're wrong. And it wasn't even over anything important. It was a matter of, you know, just said, okay, hey, great. And moving on. No, she couldn't do it. She could not be wrong. And I don't understand it.
I hear the stories from my wife. She's working at the check-in desk for just part-time for an airline. And these entitled people come in constantly, and they recommend that you come in 2 hours early. And there's a good reason for that, because you have the security line, you have the check-in line, and you've got to be up there ahead of the time when they're going to start loading. So somebody will come in 20 minutes before their flight leaves and say, I got to get on, I'm running late. Sorry, it's shut down. They shut it down at 45 minutes because they've got to get the baggage on the plane. And that takes longer than getting you on the plane. Plus, if there's a long line at security, there's no way. And then these people get angry that they can't get on the plane. And it's of course the airline's fault because they can't get on the plane. Everybody knows the rules, but somehow they think they're special. And they think that they, I mean, she's had people that says, well, my Uber got me here late, took me to the wrong terminal. Can't you have them just stop the plane? No, the FAA makes sure you leave at a fucking certain time. But these people are so entitled that they think they should get special treatment, and then they lose their shit. It's so childish. I can't believe it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember the last time I flew, I was there way ahead of time, set by more than the 2 hour window, and it was a good thing I did. I got stopped by the security both times, flying out and coming back, both over nothing.
Yeah.
But they thought they saw something in my bag. They wanted to test it. Okay, fine. Um, and then coming back, I had a piece of, I can't remember what it was, a tablet or something I didn't take out and put with like I didn't forgot to take it out of my bag and put it in a separate bin with the rest of my electronics like they wanted. Because I thought it was small enough that it would be fine, and it wasn't. And it was, silly, but it delayed me by like 20-25 minutes waiting on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I said, it was over nothing. I was fine. I was able to fly. No big deal, no hassles, other than the delay. But I knew that could be a potential issue, and I made sure I was there. I
It's
don't
it's
understand.
it's tough enough when you follow the rules, but if you don't follow
Yeah.
the rules or pay attention, of course you're going to get fucked over. Now let's talk about getting fucked over, because it's Monday and we've got some shit going down. We know Donald Trump got indicted last week. That was fun. We know the judge said, listen, man, when you leave here, you got to keep your mouth shut. Don't threaten people. Don't tamper with witnesses. Don't hand out evidence. So the first thing he does is says, if you come for me, I'll come for you, which seems to be a threat against Jack Smith or whoever the fuck it is. He's trying to pawn it off on something else, but that's clearly what it was about. So Jack Smith then asked for an order of protection. The judge comes to work on Saturday and says, yeah, be here Monday. And then, of course, Donald Trump's folks said, can we push it to Thursday? We're a little tight for time. And they said, fuck yourself. And now Donald Trump's got to deal with this today at 5 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. And he's fucking around and finding out. He doesn't have the ability to manipulate shit anymore. These people are going to be tough on him.
It sounds like this judge, Judge checking. It sounds like she's going to go ahead and just be no nonsense about it, which you need to be. But what I thought was interesting, two parts about what he did. First, Jack Smith, within half an hour of the judge of uh, Donald Trump's attorney saying, "Hey, we need more time. Got to go to Thursday." Jack Smith had a response ready to go and already submitted saying, "No, no, buddy, we don't agree to this. You have that's plenty of time for you to answer this simple motion." Um, and basically, if you didn't have time, you shouldn't be making the morning talk show route.
Right, exactly.
And then the judge saying no. The other thing I thought was interesting is they tried panning it off that he was going after the surviving Koch brother and that group, and that's where big Republican money is. Like
Yeah.
that's for a guy that's hurting on money, you're going after people that's willing to donate to your party and maybe your cause. What sense does that make?
Well, it does make a little sense in this regard. The Koch brothers, there's only one left, but the Koch brothers came out a couple of months ago and said they were putting $70 million in advertising against Donald Trump. They realize what everybody should realize, that Donald Trump is a loser. The Republicans can't win if Donald Trump is the candidate. So the Koch brothers are coming after him in the sense of the advertising, but that had nothing to do with what was going on that day when he said it. Koch brothers hadn't come up. I mean, it's an easy excuse for him, but nobody's buying it.
No one's buying it. But it just like I said, for a guy who's hemorrhaging money, even though they're going against him, and we all know Donald Trump doesn't give two shits about the party. but he should, as their supposed party leader. The last thing you want to do is go against Republican donors
Right.
because it would help your party. But he don't care about being an actual Republican. He could run if he thought running as a Green Party candidate would get him more money coming into the coffers. He'd run as Green Party, or he'd run as whatever. I mean, if he thought they'd take him and it would get him money, he'd run as a Democrat. He don't care.
Absolutely.
It's all
Absolutely.
about the paycheck and the money coming in and where he can grift.
Right. It's all about him and enriching himself. That's always been the case from day one, since he was in school to the time he worked in business and now as a politician. It's always been the same. I'm surprised that the Republicans can't see that, or if they do see that, they don't care. I mentioned this before we came on, and I want to bring it up again because you and I kind of had a back and forth on this, and I think it's worth talking about. I did a TikTok yesterday, and I was kind of admonishing some liberal TikTokers who will come out and will say, well, you know what's really going on with Donald Trump calling out Jack Smith and doing all this shit? It's just a game. It's just a strategy. He wants to get a gag order. He wants to get put in jail so that he can appeal it and go up the chain and ultimately get it overturned by the Supreme Court. Now, theoretically, that sounds maybe a possibility, but Donald Trump isn't as smart as they're giving him credit for. He is a very emotional, come out of his ass with shit. He just says whatever comes to mind. There is no strategy about what Donald Trump does. It's all reactionary. It's all childish. And the idea that he's trying to incorporate any strategy at all. I mean, you said it just now that if he had any intelligence, he would be ingratiating himself to the Koch brothers and stuff like that to help his party. But he doesn't even think about that. It's somebody attacks me, I'll attack them. And there is no strategy, no intellect in it. Donald Trump is a dumb fucking child.
Yo, you're right. I mean, like I said before we came on, the only part about this that I would say even remotely might be a strategy is he might want the gag order or to get thrown in jail or to file the motion for the cameras or whatever for those things. I know he doesn't want to go to jail,
No.
but if they try to remand him or if they try to gag him or whatever, he can say, "Oh, this is so unfair. This is so unfair. See how they're treating me. See," or with the no cameras. "See, they're hiding something. They're hiding something. They're doing something shady over here." It's all about, and then he can turn it into a grift.
Right.
That's
Well,
as far
yeah.
ahead as he's thinking. As he goes, if I do, and he might not even be thinking this much, but I bet he says, if I try this, it's either going to work, but if they say no, I can make money.
Yeah, maybe.
And he's hoping it'll work, but he's probably thinking about his pocketbook more than anything.
The thing about it is this strategy, this parlay that he does may have worked when he was president during that 4-year time, but it's gotten so old. It's like the boy who cried wolf. I just don't see that it's working anymore. I mean, he's lost so many people on the Republican side. Of course, the Democrats don't believe anything he says. He's becoming a pitiful figure because less and less people. I mean, he in Pennsylvania, he had the rally, 4,000 people showed up. I'm sure he said 40,000, but it was 4,000 people. He is losing his grip every day and it's getting worse, but he's still trying to incorporate the same bullying tactics and it's just not going to work. Nobody's afraid of him anymore.
No, they're not. Actually, what I think, I had just had the son as you were talking there. He, like you said, he'd say, "Oh, he got 40,000 people, and oh, he's the front runner in all the polls." Well, we know polls don't mean shit. But the thing is, I think what's going to happen when Iowa hits in January 15th, and he doesn't win Iowa, and say he doesn't win New Hampshire, if he doesn't win those first two states, Republicans are going to start dropping him like a lead balloon. Like he's going to be sinking so fast. But if he manages to squeak out a win, if he survives that long, he might be able to prop him out just enough. But I think it's going to be another scenario where the polls don't line up. But
well, you live in Iowa. You have probably a better insight than anybody, certainly more than me. Donald Trump would need to win the Iowa caucuses to be on track to ultimately be the nominee, but he has a real opportunity of losing there. It sounds like Iowans are getting a little tired of the baggage, but I think the big mistake he made is getting in this little back and forth with Kim Reynolds, the governor. She's fairly popular in Iowa, and he's talking shit about it. That is not a smart strategy.
Well, personally, I wish he'd keep it up a little more. Maybe he could split public opinion about her more, but
Yeah,
only because I can't stand her. But the yeah, talking bad about the Iowa governor is probably not a good way to win the Iowa caucus. But at the same point, I do think back Iowa, one of the reasons the Democrats moved to make South Carolina first in the nation versus Iowa is Iowa, at least on the Democratic side, and I think Republican side too, we were getting it wrong.
right, right,
We weren't picking the eventual nominee. And it was more of a, hey, we're just first to be first, so we're still somewhat important as a small little state with only 6 electoral votes. And at one point, we were kind of a swing state.
right.
We've switched. I'd say we're probably about 55% Republican, but I think that's just because Republicans have pushed most of the liberal leaning, left leaning people. They're pushing them out of the state.
Right, right. Well, what do you think happens? Donald Trump is throwing a Hail Mary pass here. His only defense in all these trials coming up is winning the presidency and pardoning himself or somehow shutting down the investigations or the trials. And that's not even a long shot. That's an impossibility. But if early on he loses in Iowa and, like you say, New Hampshire, he could be fucked really early on in this whole presidential race.
Oh, he could be. Like I said, and his other strategy is similar. I think he's hoping that he can just, even if like by May, when the current date for the Florida trial, he's hoping that by then he's got enough delegates in his back pocket that he can say, see, I'm the front runner. I'm the front runner. And, I've got all these delegates and it's election interference if we have this trial. But if he's not winning the states, he's starting to lose that defense too.
As you listen to what's going on with Jack Smith in Washington, D.C. and ultimately Georgia, does Florida even fucking matter? I mean, because he only needs one conviction. Does it really matter? I mean, if they delay it and they fuck around with it, it may not end up mattering. I mean, ultimately, it'll be a nice cherry on the top once it's all said and done. But he may get taken down before we see any real action out of Florida.
In that regard, no, Florida doesn't matter. The only, like you said, cherry on top would be nice. The only reason I even mentioned Florida is it's the first federal one currently with a
Right.
set start date, and it's deep into the primary season.
Right.
So, but he's no, Florida doesn't matter. I don't think we're gonna have action out of DC. I don't see Judge Chutkan going, yeah, let's put this off to January 2025. No big deal. I think this is going to get out of all of them. It's only 4 charges. Sounds like there's a lot less discovery. Jack Smith has said he's ready to go. He's ready to hand over discovery now, and it's the defense team that's just fucking around with it. I think this is going to get fast tracked, and I would be surprised if it doesn't start within 90 to 120 days.
Yeah, it definitely could. And I don't think this judge is going to be manipulated or pushed around. She seems pretty strong. She doesn't fuck around. When what I heard I'm listening to the lawyers go on television shows for Donald Trump, which is a fucking mistake up front, regardless of what you talk about. You shouldn't be talking about anything, but they're not expecting to win the legal fight. They're trying to win the court of public opinion. But even if they do, that doesn't keep them out of fucking jail. I mean, they're going for a consolation prize that gets them nothing. But I heard one lawyer, well, he implicated Donald Trump in a crime the first time he came out. But recently when he came out, he said, we're going to try the 2020 election. Really? That's going to be your strategy? I mean, it went to the Supreme Court 62 times and failed. There's never been any proof. There's never been any real witnesses. And that's going to be the basis of your defense of Donald Trump? Jesus Christ. If that was my lawyer, I'd go, you can't come up with something better than that?
The problem is they're probably not allowed to come up with something better than that.
Right.
Donald Trump doesn't get the best of the best anymore.
No.
He gets whoever will accept whatever bullshit he'll pay them. And if he pays them,
yeah.
And then he turns around and he tells them, "Well, this is what is going to work. It's going to work. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I was president. I know what I'm doing. I know the law." And it's what he probably said. And no attorney worth their salt would be doing half of this shit.
No, of course not.
The only thing, and again, I don't think he's this smart. And I just had this thought is that if their defense is this absolutely pitiful, is his convictions might get overturned with a new trial ordered on appeal for inadequate defense.
Well,
if they don't put up a good enough show, that might happen. But then again, by that point, he's going to be so irrelevant, it's not going to matter.
No,
he's going to be out of politics. He's going to be done, and he will have probably at least served some amount of jail time.
Well, that's why I tell people, I said, a lot of people are worried that we have to have a bunch of convictions before the election. And I think we will have some convictions before the election. You got Manhattan, J6, who knows what the fuck's going to happen in Georgia. We'll talk about that in a bit. But just by virtue of having 4 or 5 criminal cases going against you, you've got maybe 3 civil lawsuits going against you, and Letitia James says she's ready to go now, and that's $250 million, at least what she's looking for. Without any convictions, and maybe the trial started or whatever, I still think this buries Donald Trump. It destroys him, both in his image to the Trump-fucks that love him, and I just don't know that he can physically and emotionally hold out. I mean, we see what he's doing now with this little fucking order of protection. He's freaking out about it. What's he going to do when Fani Willis comes out and has 25 charges all involving RICO? He's going to freak the fuck out, because even if he wins the presidency, he can't pardon himself. It's going to be a mess.
Oh, he's going to lose his ever-loving mind. I mean, just thinking about it, we could see potentially a time frame here where the order of protection comes out, Monday or Tuesday, where she issues her ruling. Potentially even with a new filing from Jack Smith. I don't know if he has filed this or not, asking for a gag order because Trump can't help himself.
Right.
And or at least the threat of a gag order from, and the same day he gets that ruling from the DC court, he could be turned around and get indicted from Fani Willis in Georgia, or vice versa. He could get the indictment and then the ruling. He's going to lose it. Not only is he going to lose his mind, but if he gets hit with some sort of a protection order or a gag order, and then gets hit with those indictments, guarantee you he breaks it almost immediately.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, he's dealing with this order of protection later today. And we were talking, and I think you know more about this than I do. He still hasn't stopped yapping. You were talking about him going after Mike Pence, who may be the fucking star witness of this whole thing, which is an absolute violation of what the judge told him not to do.
What do you call him? Little Mike Pence. Not even little with 2 T's, but 2 D's.
2 D's.
Didn't even spell it right.
And he called him delusional, I think, which is ironic. Which is ironic.
Very ironic. But turned around and said, "No, I I didn't say he was just too honest, and I didn't tell him to do this, as the evidence is in the indictment. And now Mike Pence is making money off merch
Yeah.
and trying to turn it into some sort of a campaign slogan. It's not going to work for him. It might make him some money, but
Yeah. He has no chance to win the presidency. He can't even get the Republicans to come together over him. Half of them hate him, the others don't care. They just want to be as far away from Donald Trump as possible. And unfortunately, he's too close. But yeah, Mike Pence is going to jump on whatever bandwagon he can, and it's just kind of pitiful. I don't know why this guy thinks he's got a shot. He does not. But Donald Trump, it goes back to what I said before. Donald Trump doesn't think before he talks. He's like a
no.
child. He's a reactionary. He's got an order of protection he's got to deal with on Monday, and he continues to talk shit. He continues to break the rules. Now, what does a serious judge do with that? My guess is the first time they're going to give him a stern talking to and make some threats. But ultimately, I think this judge is not like Aileen Cannon or any of the other judges. She'll have to do something about it, whether it be a gag order. But what's a gag order going to do? He's just going to violate that too. So do you put him in jail? And I don't care what anybody says. He does not want to be put in jail, because while he's in jail, his lawyers are going to try to delay this thing. So this fucker's going to be sitting on his ass in jail while his lawyers are trying to delay the fucking trial. He's just got him in. He's got himself in so deep that he just makes it worse with everything he does.
Yeah, yeah. No, he definitely doesn't want to go to jail. And you're right, as they're going to try to delay this because that's their only tactic. But the longer he sits in jail, he can't campaign, he can't rally. And I think if he gets held, even if it's just, in contempt or bail revoked or whatever they decide to call it to get to hold him pending trial, I think you start seeing more and more of the Republicans start to push away and take major shots at him, just because he's going to be in a position where he can't strike back.
Right.
While he's in jail, he won't have access to his Truth Social. He won't have access to Twitter. He won't be on Facebook or whatever. He won't be able to call into Hannity, and nobody will be talking to him. And hopefully, with him sitting in jail, his attorneys will be a little more free to do what they need to do or should do in his defense, and not making talk show rounds spouting his talking points. But it could be the worst thing for him, but it also could be the best thing for the Republican Party.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Republican Party needs to make a break from him, and I don't know why they haven't up to this point. I mean, what Donald Trump is doing is a I don't know what is a trait of narcissists and bullies. All they got is the bullying tactic. So they bully you, and if you don't fall for it and bend over for them, the only option he's got is to be a bigger bully, make bigger claims, get tougher. He can only keep doing that. He's going to keep doing that until somebody folds up. But unfortunately, in this day and age, in this time with his reputation currently, nobody's going to back off the motherfucker. He's going to he's going to keep doing this until it destroys him. And I've told people before, whenever I've dealt with narcissists, and I've known a few that were close to me, this is always how it ends. They have their time in the sun. They are successful, but they always crash tragically. And they either run away or they just kind of whimper in a chair someplace. I've seen it both ways. So this is not going to end up good for Donald Trump. I don't care what anybody says. I get people all the time saying, well, what if he could win? He's not going to win. He's not even going to be the nominee. He's going to die. And I don't mean that literally. I mean that figuratively. He's going to die on the vine before we even get to the election.
Yeah, no, I don't think he'll be the nominee, like I've said before. I think it'll be Chris Christie.
Really,
unless there's somebody else. I don't see anybody else right now. He's the only one taking shots at Trump. and he's the only one who seems to have a real chance. Um, but I mean, so all the other ones are. I think Christie's the only one who could keep it close with Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden still wins, but I think he keeps it close enough that he's a contender at least for uh the Republicans are still a contender for 2028. I don't see him beating Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden wins, but no, none of the other ones. I think if any of the other ones become the nominee, I think Joe Biden gets 350 electoral votes, maybe more.
Yeah.
I think it's a landslide, and it probably if anybody other than Chris Christie wins it, there's a good chance it really helps Democrats down ballot as well.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Chris Christie's playing a calculated game here. He's betting that Donald Trump will drop out at some point, and maybe his stock will change with the people. Both DeSantis and Chris Christie are trying to play a game. They're playing it differently. Ron DeSantis has this little war of words going on with Donald Trump, but yet he says, I'll pardon Donald Trump if I get to be president. Now, it's not that he's a nice guy or he likes Donald Trump. He's seeing Donald Trump dropping out and then hoping against hope that the little Trumplafucks that follow Donald Trump will say, well, Ron DeSantis will save our guy, so we better vote for him. But I think that's a miscalculation. I think if Donald Trump is out of the picture, those people don't vote for somebody else. They're so locked into Donald Trump that they won't vote for anybody else. And Chris Christie, he's hoping that people get mad at Trump after going through all this stuff and he gets exposed and they're going to say, okay, this is our new champion. He's fighting against the bad guy now, who we thought was the good guy for a while, but now we know he's a bad guy. So we got to get on board with Chris Christie. These guys are playing the long game, and I don't think it's going to win for either one of them.
It's not, but I think they both do have one thing going. If either one becomes the nominee, I think Trump's base, if he doesn't make it to their state's primary, there's a chance those people stay home and they don't vote in the primary. I
Right.
would
I
firmly
agree.
believe that.
I agree.
But when it comes time for the general, even with Trump out of the picture, I think those people still show up and vote for the person with the R next to their name. Because they're
Yeah.
the type of people that show up to vote every general election. So I think we can't count out Trump's base for the general. We have to keep focusing on that. But they're going to vote Republican. We're not going to switch them to voting for Joe Biden by any
No,
means.
no.
But Chris Christie or DeSantis or whoever, they just have to convert enough of them to win the delegates to get the nomination. And if Trump's base stays out of it, or doesn't vote in the primary, I think that helps either one of them. But I
Right.
think it does help Chris Christie more.
Right. Yeah, I think he's the loudest one, and Republicans like the loudest one. I mean, in 2020, we had probably, I'm guessing here, but I think it's true, the greatest turnout of voters ever in 2020. I
I
mean,
think so. I think that's
okay.
right.
I think it's going to be bigger in 2024. And it's about fear on both sides. Fear that Donald Trump or somebody like Donald Trump would be president. People are scared to death about that. The Democrats or the Republicans on the other side are scared to death that we're going to be turned into socialists and we're going to lose our country, like Donald Trump says. I think there's going to be a lot of fear behind the next election, and we are going to have a huge turnout, which is a good thing. I mean, there's more Democrats than there are Republicans, and it will do well by the Democrats, but I think it's going to be a huge fucking turnout. People are going to get
Oh,
ripped up and scared.
it's going to be huge. I think you're going to have, the younger voters are going to turn out
Yep.
and they're voting 75% liberal Democrat. Um, and I think they're really going to turn out. The biggest thing we need to focus on, I think you're right about the fear. We need to focus on the fact that it's going to be a fear-based election, and the Democrats can really turn that into messaging. But they also need to focus the presidency is big, but I think Joe Biden's a lock. But we also can't be too comfortable that he's a lock. You know, you've got to find that gray area, but we can't forget the down ballot races either. We
Right.
can't focus too much on Joe Biden, but we also got to make sure we're doing what we need to do to win the Senate seats, the House of Representative seats, your governorships, your state elections.
Right.
You know, sure, having a Donald Trump back in the presidency would be catastrophic, but you could potentially check that if we had both chambers of Congress.
Right. Right. And that's exactly the point. If we get Joe Biden elected, but we don't have both chambers of Congress, we get what we have now. Nothing being
Right.
done, everything being obstructed, nothing but adversarial attitudes in Congress, and complete nothing out of Congress. And that's what we've got to change. We've got to get control of the House and the Senate so some things can actually be done. And my feeling is that Joe Biden wins, we get the House and the Senate. A lot of good things presumably will happen between now and 2028, and it'll be that much tougher for Republicans to get back in 2028, regardless of what they do to rehabilitate themselves.
Oh, I think you're right. I think as long as Joe Biden has a full Congress behind him and they're passing well-written laws that are passed in good faith, and obviously, I mean, there's always a chance that the Supreme Court could throw it out. But if they're getting stuff done, there's no chance for Republicans in 2028. So that they've got to get a lot done. But like I said, I think the last time I was on here, I think Joe Biden is going to focus on getting everything he wants to accomplish for his legacy in his first 2 years. I think he's going to really push and not bank on that second half of that term. I could be wrong, but
No,
it makes sense to me.
yeah, when I try to think logically and rationally here, Joe Biden wins, he gets the House and the Senate. Even though he's known to be a moderate, it would make sense. Now, again, I'm not a politician. I'm not Joe Biden, so I don't know what he's thinking. But if I'm Joe Biden, I'm going to get every fucking thing I can get passed in those 2 years, because I'm done in 2 years, assuming I live that long. And I'm going to leave the most impressive legacy of any president in history. He's already done pretty well for the first 2 years, but if he can get something done with health care, with student loans, with gun control, with codifying Roe v. Wade, he does all that stuff in the next 2 to 4 years. Nobody will come close to him as far as accomplishments in terms of a president. That's what he should do.
No, that's what he should do. And then, like I think I said the last time, and again, this is just me spitballing it, but I think after he gets everything passed for his legacy, and as long as Kamala would have a favorable Congress going into after the 2026 election, I mean, not that I would want him to retire. Maybe he makes it all the way through to 2028 and he serves his full term, but it wouldn't surprise me if he resigns after 2026 if he's gotten everything he wants done, and nobody would blame him either. He'd be 80,
No.
what, 84?
84, yeah.
Something like that, 84, 86, somewhere between there. Nobody would blame him for wanting to retire and enjoying the few years he's got left. But that's just my thoughts on it. I think, but to that end, I think the Democrats also need to be pushing Kamala this election and showcasing her,
Absolutely.
getting her out, because as much as this election is going to be a referendum on Republicans, on Donald Trump, on the danger of keeping Republicans in power, and the good things Joe Biden has done, it's also, I mean, the Republicans are probably, if they were smart, which they're not, but if they were smart, if they wanted to turn this into a referendum on Joe Biden, I'd quit focusing on the scandals, focus solely on his age,
Right.
and say, look, and point at Kamala and be like, is this the person you want running in the next, because more than likely he's not going to make it the rest of his term. She's going to be your president. Do
Right.
you want that? And if, they like to run on fear, and I hope I didn't just give them some ideas, but
Well, they're
Not to say what this year. I'd be like,
they're going to listen to this show or take any advice from a fucking libtard. They're smarter than that.
that's true.
But I think you're
But
right. They need to showcase Kamala, because I don't have any worries about her ending up being president, but that will
no,
be a sticking point to some people. Joe's too old. He won't make it. Can we have Kamala as the president? I don't have a problem with it because before the 2020 election, when she was kind of in the race, I thought she was a very sharp, very intelligent woman. You know, people have to understand if she's coming off non-existent or whatever, it's not necessarily her fault. It's actually Joe Biden's fault. Joe Biden should be cognizant of showcasing her because she's going to be a more important factor to his election than most vice presidents are in other people's election just by virtue of his age.
oh, definitely. But I think it's not just a thing on Joe Biden. It's just he's an old school politician,
Yeah.
and he's trying to do it like they always have done it, which is the vice president is kind of not seen. They're there, but they're not important. You send them off, they do minor things, and yes, they do handle some stuff. Because I remember hearing about different trips he took as vice president. A couple trips Cheney took, um, and Al Gore. I remember Gore helped do a couple things. I couldn't tell you what. I just remember hearing he was doing something. But for the most part, they're just kind of a paid official that's there, and they're only really there to be a backup
Right. Right.
if something happens to the president, which is now why you have to showcase her because her being the backup is going to be on the forefront of everybody's mind.
And the most frightening thing to the Republicans are imagine this. Joe gets to 2026 and he says something happens or he retires. So now Kamala can ride out the final 2 years of his term. She can run in 2028 and she can run in 2032. So that woman, if she was any good at being a president and campaigning, she literally could be president for fucking 10 years.
Right. Exactly.
That's got to be scary. I mean, she's more progressive than Joe Biden is. That's why she's there. And that may be exactly what we need. Something a little more progressive. Because as I've said before, we're way right now, whether you're a moderate or not, you've got to crank the wheel to the left real hard in order to get it back to center if that's where you want to go. You can't just
Right.
heat it up. You got to go all the way. And somebody like Kamala might be better at doing that.
Very well could. I mean, I could see potentially, and this is again me spitballing, but say in 2026, Joe Biden, or 2027, I guess it would be after the 2026 election, Joe Biden resigns, says, "Hey, you know what? I've done everything I need to do. I'm done." And Kamala has to take over. I could see maybe a Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom ticket.
Yeah, absolutely.
She puts Gavin Newsom in there. Uh, Maybe Hakeem Jeffries, which I'm not sure which state he's from. I know
Oh,
Gavin's obviously California. She's from California. That'd be the only reason she wouldn't pick Gavin Newsom.
yeah.
Um, but I could see her picking a high profile Democrat. And if they pick a high profile enough Democrat, it could be a thing where now 2032, that Democrat tries to run on their own and still wins if
Yeah.
they've done enough under her term.
If they do this right, they could end up creating a dynasty. I mean, they could have put anybody in as vice president with Kamala if she ends up running. It could be Pete Buttigieg. Everybody loves Pete
Oh,
Buttigieg, and he's smart as a
that could be
fucking whip.
good.
That could be
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh,
A
I like
black
that
woman
idea.
and a gay white guy. The Republicans would fucking love that.
Oh, they'd be losing their shit. I love it.
Yeah, it's a weird, but I think we're going to see a lot of changes after this 2024 election. I think this country is going to change, and I think it's going to change for the better. Tell you what, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We've got listener Eric with us. We've been talking about indictments for Donald Trump. And, Eric, every day we get closer and closer to the imminent indictments coming out of Georgia. I'm really anxious to see that because we're talking about RICO. We're talking about um, uh, multiple charges against multiple people. And I heard something yesterday. We were talking about it at the break. Uh, we know that barricades have been put up. We know that Fani Willis has kind of given a time frame between now and September 1st. But there was something else that came out yesterday that I find interesting and maybe tell us something. She has instructed them to close off certain streets starting today and going through the 18th. Now, before we talked about it, in my mind, I thought, okay, well, then it's going to be an indictment sometime between now and the 18th. But I was wondering why there would be such a large window there for the indictment. Is she just trying to play some head games or whatever? But you suggested something that I think is absolutely dead on. So why don't you give us that example again?
Well, yeah, I hadn't heard that she had closed off streets till you said it. But then the minute you said it, I thought about it for half a second, and I thought, what if she's doing it because they're going to need multiple days to arraign everybody?
That
You know,
makes
if
a
you've
whole
got
hell of a lot of sense.
10, 15, 20 people, their schedules aren't going to all mesh. They're not going to be able to get them all into, a courtroom on the same day at the same time. And I don't know what the legal procedure is if all the indictments are handed down together, if they all have to be tried together. I don't know how that all works. Um, but it makes sense to me that she left windows open for multiple defendants over multiple days to actually end up in court.
Yeah, we know that Jack Smith is going to come up with some more indictments for the January 6th thing. We pretty much know why he only indicted Donald Trump in the first go round, because he wanted to keep it slimmed down so that he can focus on that one thing and get the trial in quickly and get it done quickly without any confusion or complications. And I don't understand enough about RICO, but I know when you're talking about RICO, it's talking about a large group of people like organized crime or something like that. And we know from the foreman who was interviewed, that kind of weird girl that was interviewed, that it's going to be anywhere from 12 to 15, maybe more people indicted. So I presume if it's RICO and it involves that many people, we're going to hear indictments on all of them at the same time. But like you say, you can't arraign them all in one fucking day. You're going to need some time to do it.
You're going to need time. Again, I guess I just don't know the procedure, if they all have to be considered part of the same trial, if there's process for separating them into separate trials and doing separate arraignments. I don't know what that all looks like. But to me, logically, it would say 15 people, maybe 20 people, multiple days. That courthouse is going to be busy, and we don't know, there might be names we haven't heard of federally. Maybe there's some state level people that they're worried about that are very popular in their state, that they might be worried that some of the dumb fucks come up to try something or protest or who knows what.
Well, we know that 8 of the fake electors have flipped on this in this case. So I don't know how many other electors are there. There's another 8 or 7 or whatever it is. So
I think it's 8.
Yeah, I think it is 8. I think it's a total of 16. But so we might very well have electors in this mess. We might have legislators, Republican legislators who were involved. Um, you know, with Georgia, it could be Lindsey Graham, certainly could be Mark Meadows, unless he cut a deal with them too. Rudy Giuliani, we know, has already got a target letter, so we know he's getting indicted. I think when that comes down, that is going to stir a lot of fervor in the Republican Party. A lot of fucking people are going to be freaking out.
Oh, definitely. I think it's going to be this will be the biggest swath of people that have been under indictment for anything.
So far.
Um,
But
and
I
it's going
think
to be so far. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Republicans handle it. Do they side with them, or do they throw them all into the bus? Do they start cutting ties? Because now if you're starting to charge Rico, and you come out, oh, I support him, there wouldn't, all you're doing is shining a spotlight on yourself.
Right.
And maybe is there some small amount of evidence that they can tie you into the conspiracy and hit you with Rico charges too? Maybe that's where they start to cut ties. I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see how many Georgia state level people are involved. Does Lindsey Graham get taken down? Is it just Rudy Giuliani? Are there any of the other attorneys involved?
Well, Mark Meadows and Rudy Giuliani both visited Georgia to talk to legislators and stuff like that. We haven't heard much about Mark Meadows. We presume that he rolled on Donald Trump on the federal level, but that has nothing to do with the state charges. So unless he flipped on the state charges too, which wouldn't surprise me, he should be in line for a possible indictment as well as Rudy Giuliani, because he did exactly what Rudy Giuliani did. He went down there and he's trying to bully people into changing the fucking election. That would be the ironic thing if Mark Meadows cuts a deal and gets out of any serious time on the federal level, but Georgia fucking hammers him. That would be hilarious.
Oh, I'd love it. I would really love it. And I think Mark Meadows has at least cut a federal deal, only because his name hasn't been brought up by almost anybody over anything. You don't hear him talking about it. We haven't heard that he's gone in and talked to Jack Smith, but we haven't heard that he hasn't. We haven't heard that he was subpoenaed. And for as high profile of a person as he is, it's just, I can't imagine that he's not part of this, targeted on both federally and in Georgia. But I could see him cutting a deal. I really could. I think he's going to save himself first over anything. And he might have cut a deal, but I think with whatever deal he gets, either for federally or for state of Georgia charges, I bet he's still going to end up having to do at least some jail time.
The interesting thing is, I think anybody that gets indicted around Donald Trump, whether it be his little circle, his administration, or sitting members of Congress, I think every one of them will be willing to roll on Donald Trump. But the question is, did they wait too long? Because it sounds like Jack Smith and Fani Willis have pretty good cases already. Do they need somebody to roll? And if they don't, then they got nothing to negotiate with.
Right. The only way, if their case is good enough, and again, I'm spitballing, like I said earlier, but and I don't know how all this would work. If they try Donald Trump on January 6th, like federally, in front of Judge Chutkin, and if that case starts to look like it's going bad, and they've got another witness who's willing to flip, they think maybe this will be the linchpin. They might take a deal, but if they think they've got enough evidence now, they won't. They probably won't take deals from anybody at this point. It's probably too late. What I think is funny is like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, "Oh, he's a lousy attorney and he's got a high, low conviction rate, and he's this and he's that." I can't remember what all of her quote was, as he literally has like a 99% conviction rate.
Right. Well, I mean, that's all these people can do is, and that's when you know that Marjorie Taylor Greene knows she's in trouble. I mean, they got her phone. Jack has her phone.
Oh, I don't remember hearing that.
Yeah, he has her phone. He has everybody's fucking phone. He had Meadows' phone. He had Giuliani's phone. So there's a lot of evidence there. And the only thing somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump can do is try to discount or discredit whoever's coming after him. That's really all they have, and that's a pretty weak defense. It's just not going to fucking work. And I'm really anxious personally to see some members of Congress get nicked here too, because I think that will change the whole paradigm of the Republican Party. They're going to go from screaming from the mountaintop for Donald Trump to scurrying, trying to save their ass and getting real quiet, which will be helpful to this country and helpful to the Democrats.
Well, what I just thought of because we mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you talk about sitting members of Congress getting nicked. What happens if some of these sitting members of Congress go down, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, um, after the Republican primary is over in Georgia? So they can't
Right.
really get anybody through a primary process on the ballot to replace her. Could a Democrat sneak in and steal her seat?
Well, yeah, you would assume so. You would assume that would be if you've got somebody who's been charged or convicted of a crime, and you know, as much as Donald Trump can run for president if he's committed a crime, they can too. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they can, and that's the only reason they can, because our forefathers never imagined fucking politicians being this criminal, so they didn't think they had to mention it. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Republicans going, not all Republicans, not the base, but a few Republicans, and that's all we'd need, going, oh, this is fucking too much. I'm not going to vote for somebody who's just going to embarrass me and where I live for the next 2 years. You Now, if some of them get taken out of the House, they'll have special elections, you know, whether it's their time or not, and that could show a switch in from Republican to Democrat. It could. I mean, there's still these people that are so stringently Republican, they'd vote for Charles Manson if he was fucking Republican.
Well, on that, you're right. There was a creator on TikTok, and I can't think of his name now. He's a liberal voice coming out of Alabama. Oh, I can't think of his name. I can picture him clearly though. Anyway, he was comparing the way Republicans in the South vote, and he said if you ran literal biblically accurate Jesus versus the literal biblical devil versus Satan himself, and Jesus would run as a Democrat, you know, feed the poor, feed the hungry, welcome the stranger, and
Yeah,
all of his teachings. And where the devil would be like, you know, we don't want nobody new here. Keep the immigrants out. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Work hard. They
right.
would vote for literal Satan himself if
Oh,
you could
absolutely.
if he had the R beside his name.
And when they vote for Donald Trump, that's essentially what they're doing, because he's just. I said this before, and I said when he came in as president, I don't think his intention was evil. I think he was looking to grift and self promote and do all that stuff. But I think it was the people around him, not unlike Putin, who realized this is a fucking easy manipulation. We just got to pat him on the back, point him in the right direction, and he'll do anything we say. And then once he got into it and he gets in a little trouble or people are talking badly about him because he hates that, then the evil part comes in. He's willing to jump on board any fucking bandwagon, even if it's the most horrific bandwagon there is, just to save his ass or to get some adulation or something. Donald Trump was dragged in, I think, to be evil. He was stupid in the beginning. He was a bad guy in the beginning, but I don't know that his intention was to overthrow the country initially. But when we got to 2020, he knew he had to stay in power, otherwise he was going to fucking jail. So then he jumped in and headlong, and now he's the evil motherfucker that he is.
Yeah, well, I think he fell ass backwards into the presidency, and I think even when he got it, his initial thing, it was all about what he could do with that power for himself. It wasn't about doing evil things against the country or anything like that. It was like everything with him. It was all about himself, whether it was cementing a legacy, whether it was tax cuts and making himself money, whether it was overcharging his hotel rooms, you know, to foreign countries or overcharging at Mar-a-Lago for Secret Service or whatever his plan was. I think it all came down to it was all about money, 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 and himself.
Right.
And then I think you're right. He got manipulated by the wrong people, and I'm guessing he realized he was in a world of trouble, and he thought the only way he could save himself was by still being president because everybody around him said, I'm guessing somebody told him, well, you know, you'd have been in a lot of trouble for that, Donnie, but you're president, so they can't touch you right now.
Right. Well, and we know that that's true because he announced he was running for president 2 years ahead of the election, well before anybody normally would announce. And his only strategy, as I was saying before here, to fight these charges. He can't fight with facts or evidence or truth because he's absolutely guilty. The only thing he can shoot for is winning the presidency and digging himself out of the hole, which is never going to happen. So I'd hate to be Donnie Trump. You better be delusional. Otherwise, you'll be going crazy knowing that you can't win and that you're going to jail. That would be the thing that drives Donald Trump over the fucking edge.
Yeah, it would. I mean, and the other thing that drives him over the edge is any amount of supposed disrespect. You
Right.
heard about him getting upset at the magistrate judge for referring
Yeah.
to him as Mr. Trump. And I don't know if you talked about it on the podcast or on TikTok, but somebody shared it on TikTok, and I think it was from Occupy Democrats, that if he thinks that's bad, how is he going to like being referred to as inmate number? And they gave a number.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when he goes to prison, he's not even gonna be Mr. Trump anymore. It's gonna be inmate and a number,
Yeah. There was
and
a time when I
there's
thought
gonna be
he'd
no
never go.
respect there.
No, no, the opposite of respect is what he'll get. And that will send him over the edge. I mean, he's been this pampered punk ass bitch for all of his life. And he's finally played his hand too far. And even if he doesn't go to jail, he is never going to be able to, with the majority of people in the country, have any kind of reputation other than being a pariah. And that's what I told people. I said, even if he doesn't go to jail, if he has no money and everybody's making fun of him and he's a joke, that will fucking kill him.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all about the grift. It's all about the respect. I mean, hell, he still has his Trump hotel and casino in Vegas, and they still refuse to give him a. You know, he's
Yeah.
still mad they won't give him a gambling license,
Right.
and he's failed 3 casinos. We people who have been kind of even sort of paying attention to him over the years know he's a joke. And then he got kind of popular with that with his weird apprentice show,
Right.
which was never meant to, I guess, be taken as seriously as it was. Somebody said it was meant to be almost a comedy of a show. Like it was supposed to be funny, and then people started taking it and it like they were making fun of Donald Trump basically.
Well,
And
when you got a guy with that big ego running the show, and then you bring other celebrities with big egos, it's going to start to get
yeah,
contentious. They don't want to get beat by everybody else. And this in the show, I know a lot of people liked it. I thought it was a joke. I couldn't sit and watch it for any period of time. I don't want to watch a guy who's worth millions of dollars and have a test by opening a lemonade stand. Fuck that. That's stupid.
yeah. But I mean, that's exactly the type of stupidity stuff that he would say. Oh, well, this will prove you can really run a business. I mean, maybe, but no, there's nothing there. But
Yeah.
people loved his show, and he was kind of popular. And I think that's part of what helped him win the presidency was that show, just because his base looked at him and he came off like a tough guy in the show because he was always firing people and he was the boss and people respected him. And
That's what I've said before. I think there are certain people who believe they're beaten down by the government, that they can't win. So they're looking for a champion, a tough guy to go fight for them because they can't or won't or don't know how to. So you get a guy that's talking some shit and he's talking in a way that you support. Of course, you're going to follow him. And then it comes down to not only are you going to follow him, you're going to follow him regardless of what stupid shit he does. That, it's like the evangelicals forgiving him for everything, but they know he's going to help them overturn Roe v. Wade. That's all that mattered to them. and somebody fighting for the Trump-a-fucks, since nobody, they feel marginalized and they feel like they've been nothing but beaten down. They got one guy who says he's going to fight for them. What they don't know is he's a pathological liar and he's not going to do jack shit, but you say shit and people believe it. Then you throw him on TV every 10 minutes during the campaign, and immediately you get some credibility or some legitimacy, whether he earned it or not. The media has to take some blame for Donald Trump being president.
Oh, most definitely they have to. But I think with what you were saying about needing a champion and then being beaten down, you have to add in it was around the time that BLM was really starting to take off. Granted, it didn't really take off till George Floyd. That's when it got huge.
Right.
There was still pushes, and there's been talk for years about how, about equality and black, that there's so much white privilege, but then you have these Trump-a-fucks basically looking around going, I don't see no privilege, and I deal with them all the time. I ain't got no privilege. I'm working for minimum wage and I'm barely scraping by. What privilege do I have? Yet what they don't realize is that there's a lot they have where it's like, have you ever gotten stopped by the cops just for walking down the street?
Right.
Have you ever gotten, do you have somebody see you walking down the street toward them and walk to the other side of the street just to get away from you? Or call the cops on you just for walking in the front door of a store or looking at you funny. I mean, there's so many things that they don't realize they have because everything else in their life sucks.
Right.
That they think, well, I'm just a poor white boy. What privilege do I have? I'm just a poor white person.
Well, I think that people mistakenly think white privilege has something to do with economics, and it doesn't. I mean, it might have something to do with opportunities in terms of economics, but like you say, it's not about money or how hard you work or how much you get paid. If I'm driving down the street, an old white guy, and I get pulled over by the cops, I'm not worried about getting shot. But there's a lot of young black men that are, whether it's real or not, they're worried about it based on what they've seen on television and their past experiences. That's what white privilege is about. And even if you're a poor white guy, you're still a white guy and you don't have to worry about that shit.
Yeah, the worst I've ever worried about when I've gotten pulled over is, okay, am I getting a ticket for speeding or something? Or can I find my insurance card? Am I going to get a ticket for that and have to go deal with that crap?
Right.
Just because I couldn't find it. But like you said, the African American community, they get pulled over. They're worried about, are they going to try to say there's drugs in the car? Are they going to bring the drug dogs in just because I'm African American, or what's going on, and yeah, it's those unseen things that you don't think about. And a lot of poor white people think that when we say white privilege, that we're talking about money, because they think we're talking about people like Donald Trump and the like that are born into money with some amount of financial privilege.
Right. Right.
And we're talking about, something entirely different.
Yeah, they don't grasp that, and that's one of the problems we have. We have an epidemic of ignorance, and it's largely amongst the Republican base. They can't grasp what's really going on. All they know is they want what they want, and they don't care how they get it. Something that's interesting. We've got this Georgia thing coming, presumably this week or next week. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all goes down. But I just happen to be going to Georgia next Sunday. We have a place in Savannah. I'm going to go down there on Sunday. And it'll be interesting to see if the indictments come out before then or while I'm there or whatever. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction is down there. Now, I will say Savannah is predominantly, the majority is people of color. White people are like 39%. People of color are 59. It's a wonderful fucking place. The people are so nice. I can't believe it. So it's a blue dot in Georgia, but it's going to be interesting to see how people are reacting down there. I know how they will here. We get half that are happy about it, half that are mad about it. But when you're in a blue city like Savannah, I'm really intrigued to see how socially people react down there, because as much as there is a majority of people of color, there are fucking racists in Savannah. I've talked to them.
That will be interesting to see. Not just Savannah. I'm curious about what'll happen in Atlanta too,
Yeah.
because that's another big blue dot in the middle of Georgia. But I mean, it'll be interesting. You'll have to make sure you let us know what happened down there, if something
Well,
has happened while you're down there.
well, I'll be doing TikToks and I'll do the podcast from down there as I typically do. It will be very interesting. My luck, that's when the fucking Civil War will start, and I'll and I'll be a northerner in the middle of the deep South. That whole
Frontline reporter.
yeah, a war reporter like back in the Vietnam days. Now that's one thing that everybody keeps talking about, and I keep telling them it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. This whole idea that there might be violence with Donald Trump's indictments or his trials or things like that, but we've not seen it in New York. We haven't seen it in DC. We haven't seen it in Florida. I think the whole fear about Trump-lefucks rising up and creating violence, I don't think that's a thing anymore. They have too much to lose by doing that. They're going to get pushback like they've never seen before. And they're cowards because they're bullies. So I just don't see them walking into something like that.
No, there might be minor things here and there. By minor, I'm talking like 3, 4, 5 people that are in a small group try something.
Yeah.
But you're not going to see a big event again. The most leadership that would have dealt with it is either not in political power,
Right.
they're in prison,
Right.
or they've somehow managed to avoid it, and they're scared shitless because they're seeing what's happening to Stuart Rhodes and Enrique Tarrio and people like that. Oh, hey, guess what? They got 18 plus years in prison.
Right.
They're, as long as we keep the pressure on and keep these cases going, I don't see them trying anything unless something were to happen and some of these cases were to somehow get overturned and a bunch of them were to get it back out.
Right.
And I mean like this year, maybe early next. But if it's any longer than that, I don't think they can whip up enough support for it.
No, I don't either. A lot of people worry about it. A lot of people talk about it, and it's largely due to the fact that if you go to the Trump-lefuck or Republican social media platforms, they're all talking. There's going to be a civil war. We're going to rise up. We got guns like Democrats don't, and they're going to fight it out. And it's just not going to happen. They talk a lot, but they never do anything.
Well, they've been talking for going on 160 years now, that one day the South's going to rise again.
It always reminds me of the
We're
TV show that's before your time. That was the Beverly Hillbillies, and they were from the South, Tennessee or whatever.
Yeah.
And Granny would always say, the South's going to rise again. Now, she would have been canceled today for that, but it was just funny back in the 60s.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen plenty of the Beverly Hillbillies. But yeah, she'd be canceled today. But that's the thing. That mentality has been around since they lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since the South lost the Civil War, it's been we'll deal with it for now, and we'll be back. We'll be back.
Well, let's be honest. That's why
rise again.
That's why Lincoln got shot. The South was trying to hit back with John Wilkes Booth and stuff. We're always going to have this contentiousness between I hate to say it, but the racist fucks, the misogynists, the anti-Semites, these people were raised in such a way that it's ingrained in their minds and they can't think any other way. They're going to look down on people of color, Jewish people, what have you. The only thing I can hope for is that as these young people move into the majority of the voting bloc, that we do get some ideological changes, that the country changes its mindset, because we have a real problem with racism, and we've had it all along. It's just that it was hidden until Donald Trump made it cool to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And the young people, from what I've seen working in various jobs with younger people, they're even up here in Red, Iowa, they're more accepting of other people than they were 20 years ago when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I remember there was some event we did at one of the jobs I was at, and we had a big group of people came in, and like a big group of the high school kids all came in together. And one of the girls was larger, you
Mhm.
know, she was definitely I don't know what the situation was, but she wasn't, one of the skinny girls. And
Right.
I couldn't help but think, man, every girl that looked like that when I was in high school would have been shamed by the rest of the girls in the class and
Absolutely.
half the guys. And she's walking in, they were walking, talking, they were all having a good time, they were all friends, no big deal. And it's like, oh, that's weird. To me, that seemed out of place and weird. And it's a sign of these younger kids, they're not as stuck on some of the other crap that we were, when we were that age and other generations were younger. They're more accepting of their peers, they're more accepting of other people,
Well,
and they're being taught to be that way.
yeah, in the 60s and the 70s when I was in school, um, if you were different in any way, I mean, even if you wore the wrong kind of clothes, you were shamed and bullied and picked on and stuff. I mean, it was, and people always say, well, you probably were never bullied. Everybody was bullied to a certain extent. It's more for some than others. I mean, I wasn't bullied to the point where, it broke me. But, you had your moments. You're a seventh grader and the ninth graders start giving you shit and picking on you and stuff. Everybody goes through that to an extent. What I worry about is the people who go through it from kindergarten to seniors in high school, just being treated horribly. And if that's getting better now, I'm relieved, because that opens up all kinds of problems. And one of the things we learned of being in the 70s in high school, you always picked on the nerds, right? Well, when the 90s and the 2000s came, all these motherfuckers were working for the nerds because they were in IT, they were
Exactly.
in computers and shit. You never know, and it's funny. Uh, I kind of get that sense too for my own kids, and seeing what school was like. It's not quite as bad as it was. You know where it seems to be the worst in talking to my wife and some other teachers? It's girls with other girls more than anything. You're not wearing the right clothes, you don't have the right haircut, you're maybe shorter, taller, heavier, or skinnier, or whatever. It's the girls kind of going after the girls. And I'm not trying to, shame.
Yeah,
Do you see that in
I've
some of the
heard
stuff
that
you do?
too. Uh, Not as much, but in a lot of the places where I run into um the high school age kids, it's usually at work where there's a uniform, et cetera. So at least some of that's contained.
Right.
But like I said, I've seen it where we were doing some party of some kind. It must have been a holiday party. And like I said, a group that back in my day wouldn't have been friends all came in as friends. And but I've also heard that some of the girls can be just as vicious to other girls. And it's not so much the guys to guys, but I don't know.
Well,
I'm 20 years out of that age group.
the only reason I bring that up, my wife has a friend who has a daughter who just graduated from high school. Okay. And she got kind of bullied in high school. And I look at this girl. She's thin, she's pretty smart. I don't see what they were picking on. I don't get it. But it isn't always sometimes how you look, it's who you hang out with or what you talk like or what you do or what you don't do.
Mhm.
And and the problem with that is it grows into bigger things like with the racism we're dealing with now. Anybody who's different, I think everybody is prejudiced to a certain extent. And what I mean by that is initially, until you know somebody, you're always maybe a little suspicious of somebody that isn't like you. I, I don't know if that's something we're trained with, but it's almost innate. Um, you know, it. I'll give you an example. When I worked in northern Arizona, okay, and I did worked at a radio station and I did sports play by play. At one point, I had to go up onto the reservation, a place called Tuba City or Chinle or something like that. I had to go up with a radio station car and go up and broadcast. I had an experience that I've never had up to that point and have really never had that feeling since. When I went up to the reservation, I was literally the only white guy in anywhere near. And immediately I felt weird about it because nobody looked like me. I got a sense of what it was to be black in a white community or whatever, maybe not to the extent they do. But for that moment in time, I go, God, this is weird. I felt a little uneasy. Now, these people couldn't have been more than nice to me and accepting to me, and there was never any problems. But just being amongst different people makes people nervous. And that causes some people to come out and fight. Instead of just trying to figure this out, they'll go after somebody because they're so afraid that they're going to come after them.
Right, and typically the ones that are willing to fight first, they're afraid to come out because, like you said, they're afraid that these other people, the other, is going to come after them because they would go after the other if the situation was reversed.
Right, right.
I think it's a little bit of projection because they know if the shoe was on the other foot, they would be the aggressor. So they assume everyone's going to be the aggressor.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. I've said this and other people have said it too. Donald Trump, in some people think that Donald Trump getting elected was punishment for this country having the audacity to elect Barack Obama. That's what fired up the racist. We had the audacity to elect a black president. So that's why they went extreme and went racist and brought somebody like Donald Trump in. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, what's going to happen if Kamala ends up being president at some point? Are we going to go through that again, or will we have worked through that?
I think by the time Kamala becomes president, hopefully a big chunk of the boomers will be gone. Hopefully not you,
Yeah, hopefully not
but
me, but yeah,
the
no, I know what
racist
you're saying.
boomers. The ones that would think that way, um, would be gone. But I remember talking to somebody about politics during the Obama administration, and this guy and I were talking, and he kind of said the same thing. He's like, we have elected the first African American president. He goes, there, we're going to need a reset.
Yeah,
He goes, we're not going to jump from the first African American president to the first gay president. It's not going to keep jumping and progressing.
no,
We're gonna reset backward to he. I don't think he intended to mean somebody like Donald Trump because this was well before Trump had, like, this was during Obama's first term.
right.
Um, but he said basically he was talking about it. He's like, we're gonna need basically an old white guy,
Yeah,
and we're gonna reset back to what we've always gone with, which was an old white guy. He goes, then we might take a step forward to maybe we get a woman, maybe we get, you know, a member of the LGBTQ community, and we'll probably take a step back again. Maybe we go from a member of the LGBTQ community back to an African American man. Don't know. But he was just saying that we're not, it seems like every time we make a step forward, we have to take that backward step.
right.
Because we start progressing too far, we're swinging too far one way, and you have the course correct, like you
But
were saying.
but don't you think that that is and that is true, but that is because of the baby boomers and maybe the older people because of where they
In
grew
part.
up and when they grew up, and now that the baby boomers are starting um, to go away by attrition. I've said this before. I heard a fact that apparently 7,000 boomers a day are dying, which is a little disconcerting to me. Fortunately, I'm a younger boomer, so maybe that it doesn't include me. Those people born in 46, where's that put them? Um,
Upper 80s
Upper
or
80s, yeah, yeah, they're going to be
no,
dropping.
upper upper 70s.
Upper 70s, even still. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the fucking ironic thing. Um, was Joe? I was wondering if Joe's a baby boomer. He's not, though. He was born before the
East
baby
Silent
boom.
generation.
Yeah, silent generation. Yeah. So, so I have to wonder if these resets and these stepping backwards aren't because of the boomers, and when they become less a factor, maybe we don't have to do that reset. Maybe we do more progression as opposed to what we've seen in the past.
I think we're still gonna I think we will still have a reset, maybe not in when it comes to gender or race, but I think we're gonna have a reset with ideology. Like we'll make headway being progressive, and then oh, okay, we did too much, we're a little scary, back toward back toward comfort
Right.
for a few years. And then, I could see it being more of an ideological reset, maybe not shifting all the way right, extreme conservative, but okay, we pushed our luck a little bit. We got too many progressive things passed. Scale it back a little bit. Let's just maintain the new status quo for a few years
Right.
and then push it out again.
Well, let me ask you this. The Republican Party bears no resemblance to what it once was. I
No.
dare say you can't even call it the Republican Party, and you certainly can't call them conservatives. That just doesn't exist anymore in the Republican Party. If there's a blue wave in 2024, does the Republican Party survive? I mean, they should have taken a look at this and said, maybe we better change our ways if we hope to compete, but they're dead set on going through 2024, getting their ass kicked. And then I think they will finally decide we got to change things up. But the question is what and how, and can they change anything up? Will the Republican
I,
Party
I,
just cease to exist as we know it now?
I've been going back and forth with it. I said, I think the last time I was on your show that they'll probably be around up until the Democrats get too big
Yeah,
and the Democrats break into two parties, and then the Republicans will probably get absorbed. Either they will absorb into a new party, or the breakaway faction, the more conservative faction of the Democrats, will merge with the modern day Republicans and be more. They would be conservative, but trying to be more they'd still be progressive by today's standards, but I'm guessing they would call it conservative by
well,
future standards.
some people have suggested that the Republicans could be end up being the centrist Democrats, and the progressives could be the ultimate far left
Yeah,
Democrats, which I wouldn't be opposed to if we can get any kind of normality in this, as opposed to the crazy terroristic type shit we're dealing with now, um, and get that to settle down. I'd be okay with that, because the Republican Party has proven that they can't handle power without trying to destroy the country. So we've got to somehow get that faction out of this fucking mess.
yeah, we do. We got to get rid of the terrorist side of it, the really crazies. I think that faction of the Republican Party is probably, if not dead after, figuratively dead after this election cycle.
Right.
They're going to be so weak that they're going to go back to being the mosquito in the room,
Right.
or the lone cricket in the room, just an annoyance more than they are like right now, with like the House has such a slim margin. If there would have been a red wave like they were expecting, 50, 60 seats, the Republicans themselves would have made the MAGA faction irrelevant and not listen to them, but they needed every seat they could get,
Right.
which gave them a shred of power.
Right.
If the Republicans are out of power, they can be loud, but they're not going to be able to do anything if they're
Absolutely.
not in jail.
Well, we're going to wrap up the podcast, but we got some shit to look forward to. We got to hear what happens with Donald Trump and this order of protection, see what happens there and see how he reacts to it. And of course, Fani Willis is going to be coming out with some indictments pretty quick. So this could be they're all crazy weeks, but this could be especially crazy.
Oh, very much could. I'm gonna have to get some popcorn ready.
Yeah, no shit. Some popcorn, some beverages, and I can't help myself when I see Donald Trump make a fool of himself or the Republicans make a fool of him. I can't help but laugh because it's so pitiful, it's so pathetic, and they don't realize it. It's crazy.
Oh, it's definitely crazy. He keeps stumbling over himself and he can't help but lose. And I just let him. I don't want to stop him.
No, let the snowball keep going down the hill. Well, Eric, I appreciate you coming on the show today. I've been on a roll as far as a guest. I've had 4 guests now in 3 days, and that's a record for me. But it's always you guys are always welcome because I think you help make the show a little more interesting and offer some input and insights that I'm not capable of getting all of them. So it's a welcome relief to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm willing to come back anytime.
Well, you're welcome anytime. And you know how to do it. I've said this on a previous podcast. Everybody says, well, I was waiting for an invite. You're not going to get an invite. Just send me an email, say I'm ready, and I'm going to go and do it. I can't remember who to invite and who not to invite and who was on. It really doesn't matter. If you were on this week and want to be on next week, cool. It doesn't matter. We're all talking the same language, and everybody in the audience is welcome to participate because I want to hear what you have to say as well.
Well, I'm like I said, I'm more than happy to come on whenever. And I like sharing my opinions out there with the audience. So, and I like a lot of the listener shows. Like you said, they give it a good variance of opinions.
Yeah.
And sometimes you hear something entirely different. You're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way.
Well, I had that moment here on this show with you talking about the possible arraignments in Georgia. So that's an interesting insight, and I wouldn't have thought of that. So I'm glad you brought that up. So, Eric, thank you for joining us. Those of you who have been listening, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.